Welcome to Faith Journey. Today I'm talking about a life spent in preparation. In Genesis chapter 6, you read the story of Noah, and it continues into chapter 7, chapter 8. The story of Noah is a very interesting story because Noah was a man of just great obedience towards God. In a time when um, God had warned and told him that, a great flood would come, Noah obeyed God and began to build the ark that God had told him to build. Of course, in that day, there were many non-believers among him, and they laughed and they mocked Noah for building this ark, and they dismissed this ark as though it would never really mount to anything, or what's the point of the ark? But Noah teaches us how to live a life where you're preparing for what God will do. Because God is always at work in our lives, even though sometimes we might not see it immediately or feel it. And so Noah understood that God had given him a great task to do. And in this task, he was preparing for what God would do. God would bring about a flood. And so he was to prepare by building this ark. This would take a long time, and he was to follow certain instructions. And so even for us believers today, Noah teaches us about how to live a life that prepares for what God will do. Because God will do some things in your life. God will do some things in my life. God is doing things on an individual level and even on a worldwide scale. God is at work. And so for the believer, it's really important not to dismiss the great message of the gospel, which is the second coming, that Christ will come again, that there is a second coming. He's already come the first time, and so he will come again a second time. And so as believers, we're to live life preparing for what God will do, because that day will come. Jesus will come again. Are you living prepared for what God preparing? Are you living preparing for what God will do? Just as Noah was preparing for that flood that would come, and he was building that ark and building and building. Am I living in a way that prepares us for Jesus' second coming? The great ark represents Jesus himself, because when the flood did come, Noah and his family and all the creatures got into the ark and were saved and protected because of that ark and by the ark. And really, that's what Christ does in the life of a believer. In him, we are saved, and we have eternal life. Our protection is in him. And so even now, we should live lives that are constantly preparing for his second coming. I know we live in a world where this is dismissed, and this is something that is just mocked, and many people would even laugh about it, just as they did in the day of Noah. Many just laughed and thought, what are you doing building this thing? But dear believer, live in the light of God's presence. Live in the knowledge that God, when he speaks a thing, he will do that thing. And he's already spoken it so clearly that Jesus will come again. So dear believer, today, take charge of how you live your life. Make sure that you're living a life that prepares for what God will do. Because anything that God has said, he will do. He's a God of promise. He stands on his promises. He keeps his promises, and he will never fail the one that trusts in Jesus Christ, the ultimate ark. Have a good day. See you next time.